knew that there was going to be some clipping on their price, but I didn't realize they were going to hit this list. Although this is kind of par for the course for them. They go up and down all the time. This isn't really anything to get too worried about, but we'll address it. Technically, this price is, well, I sold right around there, so they must have gone up a little bit, and I just wasn't paying attention. Let's see here. But they are making the list today. Let's see here. Okay. And actually, I need to do a story about this company because they're kind of a special entity in terms of growth capability. And there's a few things that they need to do to make that work. But if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be them. And it's just simply because of some of the assets that they hold on to. Manifest, thanks for joining us right at the beginning of the show. All right, so I'm going to go. So we're not starting just yet. I got to finish a couple of notes here. But I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a teaser for our first story. You guys probably heard about it this week. The CEO from... what company was it again? Herman Miller Furniture that teed off on her people in a conference call. Did you guys hear this news story? That's going to be our lead for this week here on Balancing Your Books. We're going to talk a little bit about, and then we'll talk a little bit about, what needs to happen moving forward. So, let's see here. State, Tennessee. Andy, thanks for joining us. Thank you for the sun. All right. All right. Hey Jay, if you want to start recording, you absolutely can. All right. Welcome to Balancing Your Books. I am Books at the Beach. This is our, what are we going into, our 20th show now? I can't even keep track anymore. But you guys have stuck around. I see some new faces in here today. Thanks for stopping by. I see some old faces. I love all the old faces. You guys got to keep stopping by. Anyway, let's talk about today. We're going to talk about the CEO from Herman Miller and her comments on a conference call to middle managers, employees, and other folks in staff at that company. We're also going to talk about an interesting financial situation down in the state of Kansas that could help you if you so desire. And we're also going to talk about mindset when it comes to making purchases within our checking account and our overall budget. So today, it's been a week now since this story came out. I believe Sunday afternoon, right after we did our show, this story first aired, and then all week has been a lot of coverage in financial news segments about it. The CEO over at Herman Miller, which I had her name here. They also say Miller Knoll as the company, and I think it's because she worked for Herman Miller, and then they bought out a company called Knoll over in Pennsylvania, and consequently, they've changed the name to Miller Knoll. But I think it's taking a little while to catch up to stuff. Let's see. Nope, I don't want that. Where is, let's see if this one will pick it up. Yeah, there we go. So Andy Owen is her name. Andy Owen. That's Andiowen. She teed off on employees, and part of the reason why this even happened was this was a kind of motivational call at the end of a quarter after a quarterly report dropped that they were down quite a bit in revenue, and they consequently actually had debt that was now going to tack on to their balance sheet that they had not previously had. They were actually, thank you for the sun, they were actually going to take on a total debt of $26 million exiting this past quarter. At the same time that happened, Andy Owen, who is the CEO and has been the CEO at Herman Miller and now Miller Knoll for I believe it was roughly 15 years, somewhere between 10 and 15 years. So she's been a long-standing CEO for a long time. She was awarded a salary of $1 million in that year, but then she took bonuses of up to it's like, I think it was $4.1 million is what it was when they finally did all the total calculation on this. And that $4.1 million in bonuses came out in stocks and options, and those things actually were awarded to her during this terribly down year that they're now going into debt that they've not previously experienced before. So the company immediately knee-jerked and cut off all bonuses for all employees. Now, I don't know if anybody here has ever been in the furniture business. If you're a salesperson, you live and die by your bonuses in furniture because you're not paid very well wage-wise for the work that you're doing. And especially if you're selling for your company $100,000 a week worth of furniture and you're only going to get paid minimum wage for the hours that you've worked, you might have worked 70 or 80 hours in that time frame. And even if they, by law, are required to pay you overtime for hours over 40, you're still not getting paid very well for that kind of performance. And so the furniture business has relied heavily on bonuses as a way to compensate people, to motivate them to be productive employees. And it's not just with sales staff, it's also with managers of stores, it's also with regional managers of groupings of stores. A lot of these people do get bonuses paid out to them quite well. And it's even gone so far as some people that work on assembly lines, depending on their level of production, are able to receive bonuses. So this is a industry that is rife with bonus compensation. Tam, thanks for joining us, at the heart of it. And so the fact that this company was actually going to pull all that off the table, that's a huge change. And that's kind of very unfamiliar territory for your employees. They're not used to it. So when you tell them that you're ripping off bonuses from them because you can't afford it, it changes their lifestyle dramatically, especially in a scenario where you're expecting to give them all kinds of bonuses. So that happened, and the fervor, hey, Fat, thanks for joining us, the fervor around everything in Miller Knoll, from the stores all the way up, was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're not getting paid bonuses. And there was all kinds of negativity. There was all kinds of things going on between offices and between stores about, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're going to update our resumes. We're going to get out of here. So there was a lot of stuff to unpack from the reaction to this. And Andy Owen was brought in on this particular special call to employees, and was, thank you for the Springbirds. Lizelle, thanks for joining us, was expected to say something to perhaps settle those concerns. But she didn't. She said almost the exact opposite. We're going to go ahead and play that audio for you.
Great question, Chris. And, a lot of questions came through about how can we stay motivated if we're not going to get a bonus? What can we do? What can we do? Some of them were nice and some of them were not so nice. So I'm going to address this head on. The most important thing we can do right now is focus on the things that we can control. None of us could have predicted COVID. None of us could have predicted supply chain. None of us could have predicted bank failures. But what we can do is stay in front of our customers, provide the best customer service we can, get our orders out our door, treat each other well, be kind, be respectful, focus on the future because it will be bright. It's not good to be in a situation we're in today, but we're not going to be here forever. It is going to get better. So lead lead by example, treat people well, talk to them, be kind, and get after it. Don't ask about, what are we going to do if you don't get a bonus? Get the damn $26 million. Spend your time and your effort thinking about the $26 million we need and not thinking about what you're going to do if we don't get a bonus. All right? Can I get some commitment for that? I would appreciate that. I had an old boss who said to me one time, you can visit Pity City, but you can't live there. So people, leave Pity City. Let's get it done. Thank you. Have a great day.
This is balancing your books with books. There was a lot of things that you could unpack from seeing her give this speech. Obviously, her tone, I think, gives away a lot of it, and the way that the content spilled out. Just for everybody else's point of view, at the end of her giving this speech, which she did on camera, this was a Zoom meeting, she did this with both her hands. Kind of like a mic drop kind of thing. So I think she was really thought she was getting one over on people. And I'm not sure how all this information was reported to her in terms of how people felt negatively about what was being said on workroom floors, on sales floors, in stores, in manufacturing warehouses, whatever the case may be. But she obviously took it very personal, and she went very personal, and then consequently her financial compensation was, sent out to the public, and it wasn't very good. Now, the very beginning of this, I don't necessarily disagree with. We're down $26 million. Definitely should have addressed that differently. But in a situation, Emma Otter, thanks for joining us. She feels like she might drop, let her have her 15 minutes. But what she said in the beginning about, hey, our company's in trouble and we need to, get in front of our customers. We need to make sure that deliveries are on time. That stuff is that should go on anyway. But in a situation like this where your company's kind of up against it and you're taking on new debt that you didn't have before, I could see that being a thing that needed to be said. Whether people wanted to hear that or not, that's something that needs to be said. Like the best way for us to get out of this is to be the best providers of customer service possible, to get out of our own feelings and focus on the customer and do everything we can to keep that customer and keep them around. And part of the reason why you want to do that is word of mouth. Because, Ernest, thanks for joining us. Because when it comes to word of mouth, and we've talked a little bit about this on the show as it relates to bigger business, the turnaround on word of mouth advertising is something like 85%. So if I know you and you know me and we respect one another's opinions, you might actually very, very well enjoy what I have to say about a particular business. And that business, I go, hey, I went over there to Miller Knoll. I had a great time. I bought a bedroom set. Man, they were so nice. They let me try out like 18, 19 different bedroom sets. They let me pick whatever day I wanted it to show up, and they were fine if I couldn't be there for a 4-hour window and I could switch to a 4. Like, if all that stuff is great, and if I reveal that to you, that specifically is going to be the thing that motivates you to go there. Not all the advertising on TV, not all the advertising that we see in print or digital media, not anything related to social media. Those things can have influence, true. And a lot of that is about having FaceTime with you over and over again. It's not really about justifying you going and doing business with the company. What I say out of my mouth to you personally is going to be the single biggest driver to you going and doing business with the company. So in this situation, she's right to point that out. Where she goes completely off the rails, and we're going to unpack a little bit about this. It's obvious to me that $26 million hole is a big pressure cooker for her. I'm willing to bet that the board of directors at Miller Knoll took it on the chin, that they gave this woman $4.1 million in stocks and options as bonuses throughout 4 quarters to then be turned around and hear this. And this is, a year out of the COVID years where they're expecting things to kind of churn up a little bit better. But I've got news for you. We've talked about this for the last 3 months. People don't have that kind of money to spend. The money that most people are spending appears to be out of savings, which means they're exhausting savings that they can't replenish, and they're spending money on things that they simply can't afford. But they're not buying big ticket items anymore. People aren't buying Pelotons. People aren't buying furniture. People are not doing massive kitchen renovations anymore. Thank you for the love, Bear. People are splurging on groceries, and that's why groceries and the inflationary pressures around eggs, chicken, and everything else keeps coming up as massive stories, is because there's a lot of people out there that are splurging really hard on groceries right now, and that's about it. And they're tired of paying the high prices on groceries, and that's why that story keeps coming up over and over and over again. And people over at furniture companies don't get that. For them, it's a bottom line. And you want to know why it's a bottom line? Because they keep paying out bonuses as part of their massive situation. The way that they run as companies is a massive bonus structure. DJ Dream, thanks for stopping by. So the problem comes down to the fact that the furniture business is set up in such a way that they have to have sales coming in, and they keep having to have growth. And if they don't have growth, they have nothing. And pretty soon, if they don't have growth over, say, 4 or 5 quarters in a row, most furniture companies start getting out of business. Thank you for the rose. And so consequently, I believe that is why you started hearing that coming out of her mouth. She couldn't censor it anymore. Andy Owen is clearly under a lot of pressure by the board of directors and probably other C-level staff to figure out a way to right their ship, and she can't do it. She can't do it. So that's what I think is going on here, and then that's what started this train wreck of a video conference where she just started tearing into people because she started thinking about, oh my gosh, if I don't get this done, and she just started transferring stuff. And you know, I don't want to paint sympathy for a CEO that decides to do something like this. I mean, this was straight up abusive, and it suggests that maybe she shouldn't be in the position anymore, that she's probably been stressed out so much for so long that it's time for her to leave the position. And that's usually what happens with CEOs, is that you don't typically see them, you know, going beyond 10 years. It does happen, but most of them don't serve beyond 10 years, and it's because it's a very highly stressful position. It wears them out, and a big reason why they get these large bonuses that they get is because when somebody dedicates themselves that way to a business, you know, a multi-million dollar business for 8 years or something like that, there's a lot of mental health damage that happens in that time. There's a lot of physical health problems that they have, and a lot of that compensation is to keep them going for the rest of their lives, because quite frankly, these people don't typically take on CEO positions after they've served as a CEO once. So that's something to think about, is that most CEOs, they do their term somewhere and then they're out, and they never work again. And it's not because they're just retiring and they're high in the hog. So they're retiring because their brains are beat in from the position that they were in. I mean, can you imagine listening to warehouse reports, sales reports, marketing reports, accounts receivable, accounts payable, just all day long, and you're going to have these numbers memorized in your head, and you're going to have to go around and shake hands with a bunch of people and maintain all these different relationships all the time. And some of them are foreign and some of them are domestic, and you're flying all over. So for some people, that probably sounds like a really great lifestyle. I can tell you it's high stress. Yeah, I'm OGJ, who's the CEO of the app here. That's for sure. That being said, she shouldn't have done this. She probably should have put some time and distance between whatever it was that she was last doing and when she was doing this. She shot this from her home, which that does kind of suggest to me that quite possibly she was on a down day from work. CEOs don't typically go into the office 5 days a week all the time. They actually do have some down days every quarter where they work from home, and that's been an ongoing thing for CEOs. And part of that is a work-life balance, is that if you're spending 80, 90 hours every week in the office as a CEO, at some point you got to have some time off, even if you can't afford to have some time off. So they've done that for a long time with CEOs, and so I suspect that was what was going on with her. So she was already probably at a stress point in the quarter. Yeah. Sood, thanks for joining us. So that's Andy Owen, Miller Knoll Furniture. Maybe check out their products and see if there's something worth buying. I mean, I don't want to support a CEO who talks bad to her employees and stuff like that, but I kind of want to support those employees now. And the only way to do that is to buy their products. So Miller, no, check them out. I know they're in the upper Midwest and they're out in Pennsylvania, and I think they can ship to you online if you want to. So maybe they've got good furniture for dogs to lay on, something to think about for all you dog owners. All right, so our next big story is student loans. That's a big direction change, isn't it? So when it comes to student loans, people are really concerned about whether or not there is going to be action taken by the federal government when it comes to paying them off. There's been a big talk with the Biden administration that they're going to do up to $10,000 for people with traditional student loans and up to $20,000 for people that also had, with their traditional loans, Pell Grants, which Pell Grants started dipping down, and that's part of why Pell Grants got thrown into that. And there was a time when Pell Grants could almost pay all of your bills if you were eligible for them. And the Biden administration's opinion on Pell Grants is that there was a wind down on those that probably shouldn't have happened. And so that's why they're offering extra incentive to people who actually applied for Pell Grants and were eligible for them. Most people did not apply for Pell Grants from 2010 onward because most people were told by financial student aid offices at the colleges that they attended that whatever they would have gotten in Pell Grants was not worth the application. Typically, Pell Grants have a separate application fee, and whatever money you would have gotten back during that time would not justify the fee that you would have paid for the Pell Grant analysis. So consequently, if you did have Pell Grants, they've added on this other money, but there's been talk that the Supreme Court is probably going to shut it down because there does not seem to be a direct correlation in federal regulations that gives the executive branch the ability to just sign off on stuff like this. That being said, I don't want to blow hope for everybody. I do believe that the federal government, hey Jinjin, thanks for joining. I do believe that the federal government, especially from the executive branch, has the ability to run tax write-offs. So, as you know, years ago, people used to be able to write off all kinds of stuff. Doing great, thanks for joining us. Used to be able to write off things like clothing for work, all kinds of miles related to work, and you can still do that now in certain capacities. And then there was a number of other write-offs that you could do throughout the week related to your job. Most of that got simplified now, and so you've actually gone down a tax bracket to then avoid those write-offs. And so they tried to simplify the tax code at one point, but the Biden administration has the ability to possibly do to even a temporary tax write-off on student loans, and so that's kind of the thinking, is that maybe that's what they'll turn it into, and that's definitely something the executive branch has the authority to do through the IRS. We'll see how that plays out. But in the meantime, if you're looking for a surefire way to get out of on your way to get student loans paid off, excuse me, got to take care of something there real quick. So if there's a way for you to pay those student loans off, it would be if you wanted to move to the state of Kansas. The state of Kansas has 103 counties throughout the state. 95 of them are deemed rural, meaning that they are in large agricultural areas, and consequently, the Department of Commerce in Kansas has a program where they will pay up to $15,000 worth of student loans off at a clip of $5,000 a year if you agree to move to one of these rural counties, purchase a home, and claim residency. And then for the first 3 years, they will write off $5,000 of your student loans against their own books, and they'll just send the check on your behalf, and your account will be paid off. If you owe $15,000, if you owe $20,000, it might be worth it to look into it. Northeast Kansas has some advantages to living to it. It's about an hour commute outside of the KC metro area, which would include Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. So you could possibly find work quite easily in that area. And then as long as you're willing to ride the hour-long commute back, which I'm guessing doesn't involve a ton of traffic once you get outside of the Kansas metro area, which wouldn't take too long, you could, Lucky, thanks for joining us, you could potentially live out in the country for 3 years, build equity in a house, and at the same time get your student loans paid off. And then at the end of 3 years, if you decided, you know what, I'm going to move closer to the Kansas City area because that's where my job is at, you could sell a house and buy something else down in the Kansas City area. Home prices down there seem to average just below $200,000. So for most people that watch my show, which tends to be people on the West and East Coast, that's quite an affordable home price. Even with interest rates sitting at 6.5%, a mortgage on something like that would be relatively inexpensive compared to what you probably are paying where you're at right now. Again, this is balancing your books with books. So something to consider. Something to consider is, hey, Melody, thanks for joining us. One thing to consider is moving there, taking in the tax write-offs that you can get on your student loans, and then moving to Kansas City potentially. The other thing is I've looked into some of the counties out there, and it looks like quite a few of them actually have major write-offs on property taxes depending on the types of projects that you're doing related to rebuilding the homes in the area. Part of what is driving this project is they have a lot of residences that are sitting empty, and people are not living in Kansas because they're moving away. And so this is an incentive to try and bring more people into the state of Kansas and potentially support the businesses that are there, and some of the other infrastructure that they have there, and also to build a property tax base. I mean, this type of program is not all that new. It's just the level that the state of Kansas is willing to go to get you in the door is quite interesting. And I think that if people are really concerned about their student loans and they're looking for a way to get them paid off, now would be the time to look into this kind of program and seeing if relocation is the best way for you to deal with it. So anyway, let's do some numbers. This is thank you for the gifts. This is what a lot of people come here for, is the numbers. So the major indexes this week kind of had a weird time of it. Fractions of a point up. So everything was up, but it was just really tiny increments. So we're not even going to bother talking about the percentages, but we're just going to talk about the dollar amounts that they went up. Pardon me. The S&P 500 went up $3.73 to $4,133.52. The Dow Jones Industrial Average went up $22.36 to a total of $33,808.96. The NASDAQ went up $12.86 to $12,072.46. That was good for 1/10 of a point. The other two that I talked about earlier were even smaller increases than that. So goes to show you how much of a lukewarm market it was this past week. The Russell 2000 went up $1.81 to $1,791.51. Crude oil went up 8 cents a share to $77.95, and gold went up $3.60 to $1,994.10 per ounce. A lot of people are investing in gold right now because they're concerned about some of the moves around the U.S. dollar. We'll talk about the U.S. dollar next week, and we're also going to talk about psychedelics on the stock market and how they are faring out. It's been kind of an interesting ride for them, and I hope you stay tuned for that show. Next, we'll talk about big gainers on the stock market. Hims, if you're familiar with this company, they have been a social media darling for a while. Hims and Hers Health is the full name of the company. Most of them do. They started with a lot of medicine related to male problems, hair loss, erectile dysfunction, and things like that. They have jumped into medicine for women as it relates to pattern baldness and also, not fertility, but sexual health for women as well. They've gone into that too. They were up 7.6% to $11.68 a share this week. The two things that were driving their gains was upcoming quarterly sentiments. That they've got a quarterly report coming out, and people are expecting it to be strong. Another thing that kind of played into this was that they recently received a significant certification as a great place to work. A lot of employers fight for that certification. Most of them don't get it, but they managed to get it, and it was announced this week, and that seemed to help things on the stock market for them. Scorpion Queen, thanks for joining us. Lyft, the other Uber, as we sometimes call them, was up 6.1% to $10.44 a share. Most of that sentiment is based on the fact that they're laying off 1,200 people. As we all know, when major layoffs come across any type of corporation that is asserting that they'll still be able to function with those layoffs, stock price goes up. And that's simply because there's a lot less expense going on and presumably the same amount of revenue, which typically means greater profits. And that's why you'll see the stock trickle up when there's layoffs. Our next one is Peloton. You know it as Peloton. That's right. After we talked about them being a major loser and getting called out by Planet Fitness, they've turned it around a little bit this week. We'll see what happens next week, I suppose. They make it to number 3 on the list with a 4.4% gain up to $9.48. Now, we talked about it before that they were up around $250 a share at the height of COVID, and they've lost a lot of share volume, and they've also lost a lot of share price, as you can tell. $9.48 compared to $250. That's a big dump. The big thing triggering that is better than expected quarterlies. And I do think that you'll see that Peloton is going to have to kind of re-image their aggressive stance on sales. And Trans Yuki, thanks for joining us. And whether or not they're going to be able to continue on the very aggressive sales chart that they have been on. I think they're going to have to change that around a little bit, and they're going to have to get more into what does it take to upsell current customers, because most businesses will tell you that it's easier to upsell a current customer than it is to try and get a new customer. MKKGY is our next one, and you don't know that stock symbol, but you probably know the name. It's Merck Pharmaceuticals. That's right. Merck that does shipping has a pharmaceutical branch. Merck Pharmaceuticals has been involved for a long time on your store or on your store shelves and also in your household. Makers of Bayer. They're up 4.2% to $36.46 a share. The things that are driving that is a rebound effect from a dip that was related to FDA intervention in their multiple sclerosis drug trial. So Merck, DL Benny, thanks for joining us. So Merck currently has drug trials going on for MS. They're trying to find a way to get a drug going that will actually help lessen the effects of MS, and the FDA has decided to kind of ramp that down a little bit. What I read doesn't point to any specific problems with the drug trials. It's just that the FDA feels like the amount of people Merck was trying to get into the drug trial was a bit aggressive, and they would kind of like to trim that down. So there was some concerns the last week when that first got announced. They were actually going to shut down the drug trials. That's not really the case. And so consequently, the stock started trimming back up really quick, and that's how they get on the list this week. They probably won't be on the list next week. LRLCY. That's another stock symbol you're probably not familiar with, but you're familiar with the brand. It's L'Oreal, the makeup company. They are up 4.13% this last week to $97.40 a share, and that is based on better than expected quarterlies. Their quarterly report that came out had better revenue and better profit lines than what was expected. Jones, thanks for joining us. It also involves some speculation on capital reinvestment. So on the heels of that report that they were getting stronger revenue and stronger profits, L'Oreal presented that they were going to be buying out a small makeup brand called Aesop, which belongs to a different company. And ASOP actually helps them expand their market space. So it's a totally different type of makeup company than what L'Oreal has actually had in the past. Misty, thanks for joining us. Consequently, there's some speculation that this is a really good move for L'Oreal. There's a major valuation behind it. They haven't announced the numbers yet, but it does sound like it's going to be in the billions of dollars when this thing finally presses through. You might see L'Oreal make some gains on the official notification of the purchase and what the purchase price was, depending on what people's expectations for that small brand is. But rest assured, if L'Oreal's behind it, if it's a small brand now, it's going to be a major brand later, because L'Oreal, the one good thing that they do consistently with any of the different brands that they involve themselves with, it's marketing. They're very good at it. Our last big gainer of the week, GGL, thanks for joining us, is DVA. Why didn't I write this one down? Oh, it's DaVita, that's why. They're up 3.5% from $86 or to $86.02. DaVita is a medical provider, mostly involved in kidney dialysis, but they're involved in some other things. The gain that they saw this week is based on a partnership that they got into with Medtronic, which is another company involved in kidney health, and it's based on the partnership. Medtronic has some tools that they want to use that will recommend options to people that have kidney issues, and they don't have the infrastructure to present it to customers, so they need DaVita, who has a major technology backend. And so that partnership is going to raise revenue for both organizations, because it's going to link into contracts with primary healthcare providers. And that means that there's going to be instant exposure of this new partnership to their clients almost immediately. So probably plan on seeing DaVita making some other growth here in probably the not too distant future. Definitely take a look at them. Again, their stock symbol is DVA. Miss Jessica, thanks for joining us. Our top losers for the week, we start with ALB, Albemarle Corporation, which you may not be familiar with, but you've probably heard of them before. They are one of the largest chemical suppliers to the U.S. government, and that's specifically to the Department of Defense. They are also a major company involved in mining, and they're down a whole 10% to $173.75 a share. The reason why this happened is because where they have some major mining interest is in the country of Chile in South America, and the government of Chile has made a decision that's going to impact mining in that country. They've decided that they're going to nationalize it, and it's simply because there is too many disparities between what financial compensation is presented to workers in the private sector there, and they're not able to sustain themselves or their households. And Chile has a very grim look on companies that come in and cheat their people. And so they've decided they're going to nationalize this, which means that these companies are going to be forced to sell their mines back to Chile at fair market value. And that's at the time. It can't be speculative. And that probably means that there's going to be some losses across the board. So ALB has taken a huge hit right off the bat, dropping 10% on their share price. When this thing comes to fruition, you can rest assured they're going to lose some more, because owning a mine is a capital investment. And if you lose on a capital investment, there's nothing more basic to your stock price than when you lose on capital investment that you'll eventually lose on your share price. Rest assured they'll lose more. Getty, G-E-T-Y. This is the company in the lead up to the show that I was kind of teasing people about, that this is going to be kind of an unexpected one on the list, but it's here. It's Getty Images. Now, you may not recognize Getty Images, but to give you an idea, Reuters, AP, Fox News, CNN, pretty much any news source you can think about relies on images from Getty Images. They are a photojournalist corporation. That's what they started out, was doing photojournalism, taking pictures live on scene at all kinds of things throughout the world, and then they sell those images to news outlets that don't have people on the ground, or for some reason, are not able to get the type of coverage that their photojournalists are able to. But they've expanded into some other industries as well. But consequently, they're taking a huge hit. And the reason why they're on this list, they've dropped 7.2% over the past week in their share price, down to $5.06 a share, which just about makes them a penny stock at this point. It's simply because they are in financial hardship. They've got some people that are involved in their board. There's an investment firm, and they've recommended another investment firm to come in and redirect their books. And this is balancing your books with books. I'm books. You're here. I'm glad you're here. Consequently, they are facing a very serious financial hardship. They're facing debt that they're not going to be able to conquer. They've even been actively signing new partnerships and extending partnerships, for that matter, for their image work and for their video work. But the revenues from those things are just not going to be enough to fix the problems that they have. So consequently, they've got some problems going on in their investment board. And until those things shake out anything positive, you can expect that they're going to be taking some dips here and there as the news trickles out as to what's going on. And once there's a direction for the company, you can say, well, maybe things are going to work out. But it'll be at that point that we'll see if they can make it or if they don't. So until then, they're going to be taking a hit. So Blossom, thanks for joining us. TFC, which is Truist Financial Corporation. You've probably seen their ads on television. They are a major loan provider in the country. They're down 6% to $31.47. The reason why they're taking such a hit is that this has just fallen from Silicon Valley Bank. Truist doesn't have the same financial problems that Silicon Valley Bank has, but simply put, the banking and investment sector on Wall Street is just taking hits all the way across the board. Because of what happened with Silicon Valley. And so consequently, you're going to see companies like this hit certain numbers with losses that just aren't expected and don't exactly make sense. I think that once the banking stuff kind of settles down, which it really is already, and it probably should continue to do so, but as long as it does continue, eventually you won't see these kind of weird problems go on. But we'll get into another financial institution here on our top losers list. And they've got similar problems to Silicon Valley Bank. Not all the same ones, but similar. We actually talked about this bank in one of our shows as being one that is potentially strong, but kind of has a few problems. And their stock symbol is USB, and you know them as US Bank. That's right. US Bank is down 3.6% on the week, down to $33.52. The main things driving that is that their shareholders' earnings or return on investment for them is down, and earnings for US Bank as a corporation across the last 5 years is down. With numbers being down like that, that's going to have an effect on their bottom line, and consequently, that's going to have an effect on share price, and that's exactly what's happened here. There's really not much else to say about it. Banks have to invest in relatively conservative investments. And sometimes those conservative investments just can't keep up with the pace of things that are getting expensive or things that are going to, cut loose on them, whether it's mortgages, whether it's auto loans, you name it. There's a risk and reward to being a financial institution, and unfortunately, you're seeing a little bit more of the risk. Simon, thanks for joining us. Our last loser for the week is Bowl. BOWL, and that's Bolero Corporation. Now, Bolero Corporation is a company that we've been invested in before, and we'll probably be invested in them again. I'm not terribly worried about this particular look on them. They're down 2.97% on the week, down to $15.04 a share. For full disclosure, I bought shares at the beginning of this year at $12 a share. I sold at $15. So I actually sold at a lower price point than what they're at right now. I'm guessing, without looking too much into their chart, that Bolero kind of hit a huge high based on some business going on, and then that business kind of tapered off, and so there's just a little bit of momentum out of the stock. So I wouldn't worry too much about what's going on here. As I looked over their news cycle, it seems like what was mostly going on here was a speculative concern over aggressive expansion. And so Bolero is a major bowling corporation, and they've decided to expand in Washington State, right here in my backyard, Tennessee, Florida, and New Jersey. And also, they own the Professional Bowling Association. So that's an actual sports league, and the company owns it. It's very rare that a company owns a professional sports league. Bolero has a lot going for it in the bowling industry, aside from just having bowling alleys. Um, so think about that when you think about this company. I wouldn't worry too much. It's aggressive expansion for sure, and in most retail spaces, aggressive expansion can get too costly. But because they're the biggest game in town, if they fail, every bowling alley is going to fail. And I'm not saying that they're too big to fail, because if they do fail, they will. It's just they have enough assets going on their balance sheet that even if they do this aggressive expansion, which they're probably not going to continue beyond what they've already done, they're just going to move in where they need to, and they'll be perfectly fine. I wouldn't worry about them. Robert, hey, thanks for joining us. Nunya, thanks for joining us. Just me, thanks for joining us. Easily Like, thanks for joining us. Our last segment of the day is mindset when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to making purchases. And this is Balancing Your Books with Books. Thanks for joining me. I've gotten a lot of messages from people where they're telling me that they want to make purchases, big and small. And they're telling me that they just don't have a way to make it work if they were to follow rules in budgeting. And here's what I have to say to that. If you're following a budget and you're following a set of rules to make that budget work, you have to follow the budget. You can't just make the purchase because you want to. The whole thing that's fighting you at that point in time is all in your head. Okay? It's all up here. When you set a budget, you're setting up rules that circumvent your emotions. So if you are somebody who spends money emotionally, you're going to have to get comfortable with the fact that when it comes to what you do with your money is no longer in your hands. You've set up a budget, and a piece of paper tells you what to do. A computer screen tells you what to do. And the reason you're doing that is because you've realized that you on your own can't manage it yourself because you're too emotional. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. It's as simple as that. That's what your mindset has to be once you commit yourself to a budget. You can't expect that you're going to be able to buy everything that you want. And really, if it's something that you can't afford in that particular budget, what that means is you need to set up a goal to save for it to then buy it. That's it. That's how this works. And if you thought that it was going to be easy when you first dedicated yourself to a budget and it was, you were going to be able to just do whatever you want, no. Most of us, when we sit down and budget for the first time, we've got a mess we've got to contend with. We've got credit card debt. We've got a car loan. We've got a mortgage that maybe we've gotten behind on, which, heaven forbid. We've got medical bills. We've got all kinds of stuff we have to account for before we can move forward. So think about that. When you budget, you've probably got a mess. And first you got to clean up that mess. And then you can start doing the fun stuff. Okay? It takes some while. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes discipline. But you can do it. I believe in you. Aqua, thanks for joining us. Does anybody have any questions about mindset when it comes to budgeting? No? All right. Well, this has been Balancing Your Books with Books. I'm Books. Have I heard of Blackstone? Yeah, I've heard of Blackstone. It's REIT. I'm guessing since there's no questions about budgeting mindset, that's fine. If you do have questions and you're not comfortable, are they legit? Well, do your own due diligence on Blackstone, and I don't know. Maybe we'll do a little bit of coverage on them at some point in a future episode. If you do have questions and you're not comfortable bringing them up here in the stream, you can always reach me at realbooksatthebeach@gmail.com. That's REALBOOKS ATTHEBEACH Reach me there. Send me your messages or your questions, whatever. I'd love to hear from you. Next week, we're going to talk about psychedelics on the stock market. And we're going to talk about, what was the other thing we were going to talk about? We're going to talk about something else. I can't remember. At any rate, we'll see you then. Until then, I'm Books. This is Balancing Your Books. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later.